Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Yashodanandana Jaya Brajajanaranjana Jaya Yashodanandana Jaya Brajajanaranjana Jaya Yashodanandana Jaya Brajajanaranjana Jaya Yashodanandana Jaya Brajajanaranjana Jaya Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Kunja Bihari Jaya Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava 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 Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. Shri Radharanath ki, Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki, Shri Giraj Govardhan Hari ki, Shri Prabhupada ki, Shri Shantai Gopavinandi. Hare Krishna everyone. Okay, so we'll start with our prayers. Om Jnanatimidandasya Gnana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Kadama Hyam Dadati Swapadantikam Maam Vishnupadaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Prasharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Panchaka Patarubhyascha Kripasindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. So thank you all so much for attending and for giving me this opportunity to present this morning's class in Srila Prabhupada's wonderful pastimes. So I pray for all your blessings to do justice to these wonderful activities. And we're still discussing Honolulu. This is chapter 4, May 26, 1976. Morning walks are quite lively, with Srila Prabhupada exposing the flaws of material life and taking pot shots at the scientists. So this is interesting because Srila Prabhupada didn't have a problem per se with science, and he had many eminent disciples who were scientists. And we also know the principle of spiritual life, at least of Bhakti Yoga, as enunciated by Srila Rupa Goswami's Yukta Vairagya, where you can use everything in Krishna's service, right, including science. And science itself is made up of what? It's made up the energies of Krishna. Everything is the energy of Krishna. And the scientists themselves, Srila Prabhupada said, all their good brains are given by Krishna as well. Okay, so everything is Krishna ultimately, non-different from him. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 8, Text 31. Yata hi Bhagavan eva Vastutaha sad asakshayat satyananena nahe sarve yantu nasham upadravaha. And the translation is, the subtle and gross manifestation is material, but nevertheless it is non-different from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because He is ultimately the cause of all causes. And cause and effect are factually one, because the cause is present in the effect. Krishna is present in everything. Nothing can actually exist without Him. So the scientists themselves, in a way, are non-different from Him. And we must note, though, that we're not saying that they're the same as Him. They're just non-different from Him. There's a subtle difference. So that the scientists are non-different from Krishna, that science itself, that the elements of science itself are non-different from Krishna. Why does Srila Prabhupada take exception to them then, right? Taking pot shots at them? It's because they deny that the source of science and the source of themselves and the source of everything is Krishna. That's why. It's because they deny Krishna. He's providing everything, the energies by which we exist, their nice creative abilities. He's giving sanction to their discoveries, and they deny Him. Sometimes outright insult Him, right? Questioning His abilities and His control, if He existed. So this is Srila Prabhupada's complaints, the ingratitude that we have to the Supreme Lord. So then we might argue, since scientists are persons of reason and they want to demonstrate things, that perhaps they don't see Him as the source. It hasn't been demonstrated, and maybe that's the reason why. So the truth is that a lot of things in science they can't see or they haven't understood yet. There's still so much more to discover, right? We're only in the infancy of our understanding. So they themselves being aware of their limitations, we can understand that maybe they could come to a point in future where they would see Him as the source, right? Through all their experimentation, through all their eventual understanding. And this Krishna actually speaks of in the Bhagavad Gita, because science itself, looking for the absolute truth at the root of everything, is basically like Sankhya Yoga. Right? Sankhya Yoga is the same. The philosophy of understanding the reason why everything is. And for a sincere follower of Sankhya Yoga, and we can extrapolate of science, they will eventually find Krishna as the source. They will find Krishna as the origin, and then what? Then they'll engage in devotional service. And this is why Krishna says in the 5th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, only the ignorant speak of devotional service or karma yoga as being different from the analytical study of the material world, Sankhya, right? Which is what science does, right? Analyzes the world. Those who are actually learned say that he who applies himself well to one of these paths achieves the results of both. One who knows that the position reached by means of analytical study can also be attained by devotional service, and who therefore sees analytical study and devotional service to be on the same level, sees things as they are. So, important to note though is the sincerity, that we can't start off the journey of trying to find the source, a mistake that a lot of people make in science, by immediately concluding that science and Krishna or God are mutually exclusive. That's the problem, right? To equate a belief in science to mean that we don't believe in God. So there must be that we have an open mind to the prospect that God is or will be found or could be found at the end of that path. There must be that sincerity. And another important caveat to understand is taking to devotional service directly is always the best. It's the straightest path, and it's the path that guarantees a better chance of reaching the goal. But if someone is sincerely on the path of science or Sankhya Yoga, they'll find their way to Krishna, as he promises. So we'll carry on reading. He began today, that is Srila Prabhupada, he began today by slamming the idea of overpopulation in the world. He said it was all false propaganda. He is from India and no one is starving there. Some organizations in the name of India falsely draw money from the United Nations and then divide up the money among the trustees. I have seen it, he said. Because they have no faith that Krishna can supply unlimitedly, they mismanage everything. They claim starvation in one country but dump excess grains and produce in another. He revealed the reason why. Here, the American policy, the Western policy, that if the people get easily food, they'll not come work in the industry. That is their policy. If they get cheap food, then they won't work. This is human nature. So Srila Prabhupada is making a point that he makes very often in the scripture, that there is no shortage of resources in this material world. Right? No matter how large the population is, and no matter how large the population grows, there will never be a shortage of resources. This is because Krishna is unlimited and Krishna provides unlimitedly. That's it. The reason that there appears to be so much shortage of resources is simply because the reason that Srila Prabhupada gives here and in many places, it's because we mismanage it. Right? We mismanage the resources that Krishna gives us. That is one of the main problems. The other perspective we could look at it as is that in the 3rd chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that the process is that we engage in yagya, we engage in some kind of sacrifice, and through sacrifice, the demigods give rain, and then from rain, grains are produced, and so many other things. How many people in this world are actually performing sacrifices nicely? Any kind of sacrifices. So we can't expect that there won't be shortages when we're not following the system that Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita he gave for us to live happily by. And another reason is our individual or collective karma. Right? Some of us are destined to undergo scarcity. It's something that we've brought upon ourselves by some actions in the past. But this doesn't mean that Krishna is not providing. For many reasons, abundance just can't reach us. But Krishna is always providing for all his children, all persons and all beings in creation. Okay. He said that materialists don't want natural things, and again cited the cutting of palm trees here, making them ugly. He contrasted this mentality with that of chanting, plain living and high thinking. Their policy is high living and poor thinking. They live in skyscraper but don't care for where they are going to next life, as a cat and dog. Never mind, now live in skyscraper. Poor thinking. High living, poor thinking. He gave a broad grin as we caught his humor. Know that now I am living in the skyscraper building on the 25th story, and next life I'm going to be cockroaches here. They don't know that. He doesn't inquire where from the cockroaches are coming. He has got attachment for this 24th story, but he's working so that he'll become a cockroach. So Krishna has given chance. Alright, you live on the 24th story as a cockroach, and then you'll be again killed by some, what is it called? And then a disciple says, exterminator. Yes, that he does not know. Therefore, poor thinking. He's thinking that I shall perpetually live here, and when the death will come, get out, become a cockroach. What he'll do? What power you have got? Nature is the same, that he'll come. Mrityuho sarva harashaham. Now everything finished. Get out and become a cockroach. How the scientists can stop it. So I wanted to read this paragraph in particular because it's a very, very sobering perspective about what modern life has led to. Right? We've destroyed so much of Krishna's natural beauty, so much of functionality with it, right, in this world. All for a very artificial way of life that guarantees nothing, not even a good destination after death. Srila Prabhupada says that it's all symbolized by these high rises. Right? It looks very fancy on the skyline. The problem is that even if we're living at this high level, we haven't taken our consciousness with us. Remember that colloquialism, your mind's in the gutter, right? We're all pretty much in the gutter, at least in terms of our thinking, even if we're living at a height. And it's practical, it's not something that is facetious. If we think about how people are so unhappy, how difficult it is to get positive thoughts and happy thoughts and peaceful thoughts, that we need to pay professionals to help us get it. We need so many guidelines how to be happy, how to be peaceful, so many techniques. So there's a problem. There's definitely a problem with our consciousness. So unfortunately or fortunately, the state of this consciousness is what decides our next birth, not how high we're living, literally or figuratively. Yang yang vapi smaran bhavam tyajati ante kalevaram tam tam evaiti kaunteya saratad bhava bhavitaha. Whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body. It means whatever state of consciousness that one is in, that's going to carry one into the next stage of life. So if someone is in that very low state of consciousness, but has a particular attachment to that high rise, one is going to be transferred to a lower level of consciousness, right? Like an insect, like a cockroach, within these spaces that one is attached to. It's a natural conclusion. And science can't help anybody, because now that we've discussed this, you can see that science itself can't help anyone elevate their consciousness. It can't make anybody happy. There's so much faith that people have in science because it can demonstrate something before them. But if it can't make you peaceful and can't make you happy, of what use is it? Because all a human being ever wants is to be peaceful and happy. So this is why Srila Prabhupada says that people are actually, eventually he'll say actually, that they're being cheated by science. He made another attack on the cheating of the scientists and the gullibility of the public, using his favorite topic. They are cheating the public by misleading them that they have gone to the moon. They sold some tickets for going to the moon. What are they doing with the tickets? You know that Pan American, that's the airline, sold tickets for going to moon? You do not know? They sold tickets. Because in your country, you have got a lot of money. Any kind of cheating can draw money. They sold in the beginning. They're so hopeful now that we shall go to the moon. Some family bought. Oh, scientific advancement. Yes, they go to the moon. So I have got money. Why not purchase a ticket so that I can go to the moon? There are many persons in your country who can easily pay $50,000 in the 1970s for purchasing tickets for going to the moon planet. I, that is the author, I suggested that it was like Ravana's promise of being able to go to the heavenly planets by climbing up the staircase. Prabhupada agreed. Yes, I believed in the words of Shastra. Even I am not scientist, still I shall. It is all childish, and it has proved childish. I do not say that I am better than the scientists. No, but on the words of Shastra, I say this is childish. They'll never be able to go to the moon. So now we've got the benefit of hindsight. And this moon tourism didn't take off, even though there was so much promised. The whole effort was rather expensive and dangerous, but what was driving it was man's ego. Right? It was the politics of the 1960s and 70s, the Cold War. It was American capitalism against Russian communism, and this whole space race symbolized the battle. But then at the end of the Cold War, it kind of fizzled out, along with all the ideas of people being able to take vacations to the moon. And there were a lot of other problems: lack of funding, lack of interest, few very catastrophic and tragic accidents as well. Quite sad. So basically, again, a lot was promised to people and nothing was delivered. Few rocks and some samples. And this is why Srila Prabhupada said that it's cheating, when you promise something and you can't deliver it. So again, another sobering point. In class, Prabhupada described the difference between lust and love. Verse 26 describes how Ajamil had become entangled in family life because of his lusty desires for a prostitute. Thus his life was absorbed in feeding and looking after his children, especially his youngest, Narayan. He forgot about the passing of time and his life with it, and he could not see that death was upon him. Prabhupada pointed out that we also hear the descriptions of Mother Yashoda, fully absorbed in feeding baby Krishna, but there's a difference. When something is Krishna-centered, he said it is spiritual, and when it is whimsical-centered, it is material. So this is a very nice comparison here, because we were discussing the importance of consciousness and how consciousness will actually decide our eventual destination. So Srila Prabhupada is saying that Ajamil is here absorbed in maintaining his family, and the absorption of Mother Yashoda is in Krishna. So the destination of Mother Yashoda then is Krishna. Right? The destination of Ajamil is, well, wherever that consciousness would lead him in this world. And he's representing all of us. Anyone who is absorbed in the activities of this world will keep returning here. So we may wonder, why is it that our state of consciousness is so important to decide where we go after death. So we all have this understanding that what we care about, what matters to us, right, what we love, what is important, that's always on our mind. Right? It's always in our consciousness. It's always in our thoughts. And certainly it leads to a situation where we want to be amongst those things, right, that matter to us. Shri Shri Radharanath ki, Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki, Shri Lagiraj Govardhan Hari ki, Shri Prabhupada ki. So these things that matter to us, we want to be amongst those things. And Krishna is within our heart, so he knows better than anybody else what is in our mind all the time and what we want. So he gives it to us. That's what it means. Right? Knowing our consciousness, he gives us that which we are absorbed in. And this is his mercy, because he recognizes our independence. Of course, the problem is we misuse it, but his mercy is that he only gives us what we want eventually. So if we want to absorb ourselves in him, like Maria Yashoda, then we will attain him. This is how we must understand this. So the problem is that even if we're absorbed in something and we claim to love it, it's always about us in the end. It's always about how the situation is favorable to us, how it will work in our favor. And because of that, because we always want everything our way, and the fact is that our way is not always the best. Sometimes we don't even know what's good for us. And therefore Srila Prabhupada says it's whimsical centered. It's because it's anything that we wake up and feel that we want or that we want to be absorbed in. And we don't even know if it's ever going to be good for us. So this is how Srila Prabhupada contrasts the absorption of a devotee and the absorption of somebody in the material world. He gave another example to illustrate the point. What is the difference between lusty desires and pure love? Here we are mixing man and woman, mixing with lusty desires, and Krishna is also mixing with the gopis. Superficially, they look the same. Yet what is the difference? So this difference has been explained by the author of Chaitanya Charitamrita. What is the difference between lusty desires and love? He has said, when I want to satisfy my senses, that is kama, that is lust. And when we want to satisfy the senses of Krishna, then it is love, prema. That is the difference. That is Krishna conscious movement. Don't do anything for your personal sense gratification. Do everything for Krishna's sense gratification. Okay? So then Srila Prabhupada goes on to explain a practical example in that regard. How the gopis, the young gopis of Vrindavan, they prayed very hard to have Krishna as their husband. They prayed to the goddess Katyani. So it may seem like a situation of this world, right, where a female prays to have a spouse. But it's very different, because Srila Prabhupada explains that the gopis had no interest in this marriage for themselves. Nothing was for their own sense gratification, for their own pleasure, for their own selfish desires. Their prayer was to get married to Krishna for his pleasure and his happiness alone. And that's the difference. The activities of a devotee may seem like the same as the activities of somebody who's in material consciousness, but the devotee, the pure devotee, like the gopis, is doing everything for Krishna alone. So they had such an advanced understanding, even at such a young age, Srila Prabhupada points out, because at the time they were unmarried, and most girls are married by the age of 12. So even before the age of 12, they understood that everything must be done for Krishna. Right? So Prabhupada says Krishna fulfilled their desire. Then Srila Prabhupada went on to explain a bit more about this pastime. It's a very confidential pastime. So in the book it says he hesitated a little bit. His disciples were quite new. But the importance is, of course, when one hears from Srila Prabhupada, then one will get the right understanding even of these confidential pastimes. Krishna, we know he stole the clothes of the gopis when they went to bathe in the Yamuna River at the end of their vow. So by hearing about it from Srila Prabhupada, the devotees got the right understanding. Because either way, these pastimes are out there. Licentious, selfish, and profligate commenters, they're going to be talking about it anyway. So at least if the devotees hear from Srila Prabhupada rather, they can have the authorized explanation and understanding of this pastime. In that way we can actually understand why Srila Prabhupada made the Krishna book available to us. we know that the Krishna book contains all these wonderful and confidential pastimes of Krishna from the 10th canto. And we're advised before we approach the 10th canto that we have to go through the first 9 cantos. But yet, here we have Krishna book, all the pastimes of the 10th canto available, and we're distributing it. We go on book distribution, we're distributing it to anyone, even people who wouldn't have gone through the first 9 cantos. So at least, although some who may receive this book may get it without that prior understanding, they're hearing about it in the authorized or reading about it in the authorized way from Srila Prabhupada's Krishna book. Because nowadays everything is available on the internet, right? Commentaries and so many other nonsense explanations by misguided people about why Krishna did this and why Krishna did that. Right? It's so freely available. So at the same time, Krishna book is also freely available. It's there to correct all these misunderstandings. It's there so that we can know about it. So when we're preaching, we can refer people to the right way to understand this, because they would have heard it from here and read it from there. Right? The really terrible, awful things that are said about Krishna. The Krishna book sets it right. Srila Prabhupada sets it right by explaining it in the way of a pure devotee. This is important. Through hearing from Srila Prabhupada, through reading his translation and his explanation of these pastimes, we'll understand the sanctity of the Lord's activities, right? The purity of the love that is within. There is nothing like the lust of this world. Remembering these mischievous dealings of Lord Krishna, Srila Prabhupada was full of smiles. The devotees also laughed with him, and Prabhupada approved. So you have liked this story, but the idea is that you wanted me, that is Krishna is speaking. You wanted me, all of you, as your husband. Now I am fulfilling your desire. Right? So, in contrast to the activities of this world, where everything is relative, everything is of a self-centered nature, the difference with the love of the gopis is that we get bound by the love of this world. Right? So Srila Prabhupada explains how that bondage happens. Immediately, as soon as they unite, then the relation, he means between man and woman, becomes very tight, very strong. Then as soon as one is married or unmarried, generally speaking married, then he wants apartment. Griha means apartment. So long he remains brahmachari, there is no need of apartment. He can lie down right on the street. But as soon as they've joined together, immediately apartment. Then how to maintain the apartment? Then he must have land, because formerly there was no industry. Everyone must produce his own food by tilling the field. One can produce, but they have left that process of livelihood and they are taking to industry. So first of all, apartment, then kshetra, means agricultural land, then some capital, then as soon as they're married, they, at least women, want some children. His descriptive observations soon had everyone laughing as he began to parody the entangled householder. And so Srila Prabhupada's humor was very remarkable, but it was remarkable because it was true. It was quite a stark reality. After he has got a very nice apartment and a good condition of living, then he'll invite some friends. Please come and see our happily living. And one after another bondage. Because if you're opulent, you have to show your friends. Otherwise, what is your opulence? If your friends do not come and say, "Oh, you're so wonderful. Yes, you've got such a nice wife, nice apartment, wonderful," even though they don't really mean it. Because in the Kali Yuga, this is wonderful. Right? It's so funny because it's true. Everything is mentioned in Shastra. Right? We remember those verses from Srimad Bhagavatam that describes Kali Yuga. If one can maintain one wife and some children, he's most expert. Forget Krishna. Here is. Oh, he's expert. How he's maintaining. When I first, that's Srila Prabhupada speaking, when I first came, I met one elderly lady. She had a son. So as Indian, I asked, "Oh, why don't you get your son married?" She replied, "I have no objection. If he can maintain a wife, I have no objection." That means to maintain a wife is a very big job in your country. I've seen it. Right? So Srila Prabhupada is bringing to our attention that if you're so absorbed in this, right, maintaining your wife, maintaining your kids, maintaining your family, then where will you have the time for spiritual life and spiritual cultivation? And we've all experienced it, because whenever you ask someone to come to the temple, to read scripture, to engage in service, right, even if it's small things, the first thing you'll hear is, "We have no time." And it's because everybody is engaged in these activities. And it's like if you have a glass that's full, can you add any more water to it? So this is the problem. It's not that it's bad to do your duty. Right? You have to do your duty. The whole Bhagavad Gita is Krishna telling Arjuna to do his duty, to take care of your family nicely and perform your duties in terms of your career. But you have to make time for spiritual cultivation. Because if you're only concerned about maintaining your family, that's going to be, if you're lucky, 40 or 50 years. And then you have the rest of eternity stretching out before you, and you have no idea where you're going to end up and what's going to be your condition. That's the reality. And this is what people miss. Right? Everybody is so afraid of death. Why? It's because they don't know what's going to happen afterwards. But instead of trying to create a better situation, everybody is just focusing on the now that they're aware of. It's a classical ostrich in the sand kind of mentality. So we have to give it focus, spiritual life. This is what Srila Prabhupada is bringing to our attention. Later in his room, Srila Prabhupada explains how these material desires can actually embarrass one. But it's a warning even to those who are on the path of spiritual life. Right? He said that it's not only his own men who sometimes fall victims to Maya in the form of sexual allurement. Some of the so-called Goswamis of Vrindavan have been caught in compromising situations. One respected figure in Vrindavan was caught with a sweeper woman by her husband. In anger, he cut off the Goswami's nose. So just a warning. Either the husband's going to deliver the punishment or material nature, but we have to be careful when we're on the spiritual path as well. More news on the bomb incident in New Zealand came today in a letter from Yashamati Nandan Das. He confirmed the two men involved were connected to Tushta Krishna's farm and had been manufacturing bombs in a garage. They had enough explosive to make 5 or 6 nitroglycerin bombs when one went off and blew them to pieces. He said that the media were largely accepting that the movement as a whole was not involved. There have been some wary reactions from people on the street, although he doesn't expect this to last very long. The rest of his letter was dedicated to an appreciation of the presence of their newly installed Gaunitai deities, who he said were inspiring them to go out and preach and sell Srila Prabhupada's books. Okay, so this incident happened in New Zealand, right? There were some persons who were connected to ISKCON, right? And or at least to one of the devotees in ISKCON, and they were manufacturing bombs on the side, and this catastrophe happened, and so naturally ISKCON got involved in it, sort of. Prabhupada responded with encouragement to go out and sell his books. He gave a lengthy denunciation of the press for trying to associate the men's activities with our society. Despite Yashamati Nandan's feeling of fair dealings from the press, after seeing the Fiji Sun headline, Prabhupada took pains to ensure we get a fair hearing and reportage. So now this is Srila Prabhupada's response to this incident. Anyone can chant Hare Krishna, just like we go on the streets chanting, and others will imitate us. However, in our aims, you will not find that our organization is dedicated to such methods and goals. Right? So Srila Prabhupada is making a point here that there are lots of people who sing Hare Krishna and out in public. We're not another bhajan group. We're not another kirtan group. We're not just about singing, because it'd be easy if we were, right? What is our aim then? Our aim is to awaken people throughout the world to Krishna consciousness or God consciousness by chanting the holy names of God. Right? That's clear. So we have a purpose in our chanting. It's not to earn a living and it's not to entertain. Right? The purpose is to awaken God consciousness in everyone. So that's what sets us apart from a group that performs kirtan professionally, or a group that, or even if they perform it with love or interest. But we are trying through our kirtan and our bhajan and our chanting of the holy names to awaken love of God in everybody. Okay, that's the difference. We have published so many books to explain our viewpoint, and why should we sit idly by and allow the press to unfairly take advantage of such a situation to misrepresent the Hare Krishna movement? Right? So if it was all about just singing and dancing, which some people think it is, then Srila Prabhupada wouldn't have spent so much of energy to translate volumes and volumes of literature, and he wouldn't have opened so many beautiful temples and created so many other activities in Krishna consciousness for us to participate in. Krishna consciousness is a comprehensive lifestyle. It's a comprehensive lifestyle that eventually elevate one's consciousness to the point where we can be carried to Krishna at the time of death. Right? it's much more deep than singing a little bit on the street here and there. It's a lot more deep. It's doing what the science can't do. It's what the ordinary philosophers can't do, what religion can't do, which is elevate the human consciousness. Even the most accomplished self-help person or psychologist or any of these famous people who talk on air and stuff, nobody can actually promise that I will be able to elevate your consciousness. I'll be able to help you control your mind, bring it under focus for you, so that you can be master of yourself and you can elevate your consciousness. Nobody promises this, but the Krishna conscious movement, that can help you achieve it. It is a lot more than what is being presented here. In any case, the movement cannot be judged simply by the activities of some individuals, but these men were not in our camp, and still the press took unfair notice of all the facts. We should demand at least equal time from the press to explain the entire situation clearly, and when necessary we should file suit against such newspapers, in order that things are not distorted. It is not in our aims anywhere to build bombs for any purpose. The same mentality is involved in trying to blow up a slaughterhouse as there is in meat eating. Such things will not stop people from unnecessary animal slaughter. It is only by educating people in the science of Krishna consciousness that they will automatically develop all good qualities. So this is practical. Right? Prabhupada is saying, if you blow up the slaughterhouse, you're not going to stop people from eating meat. But if you influence and elevate their consciousness, right, through the spiritual literature, through the practices, through the chanting, then they will change their behavior and the slaughterhouses will close that way, right, in a more effective way. All kinds of negative behavior will stop like this. So we educate through Srila Prabhupada says, the science of Krishna consciousness. Yasyatma bhaktir bhagavati akinchana sarver gunaistatra samasate suraha. And the non-devotee will not have any good qualities, even though they may be vegetarians, right? So this is a point Srila Prabhupada has made a few times over, that it may be nice to be a vegetarian. But unless one is a devotee, right, only a devotee has good qualities, right? Suragana. Harav abhaktasya kuto mahadguna manoratana sati dhavato bahi. So we should clearly establish our aims in such situations and not sit by idly. We must preach very boldly whenever the situation is favorable. Right? As a BBT trustee, Srila Prabhupada also received his copy of the latest BBT report written by Rameshwar Swami. So in this report, it outlined the financial standing of the BBT as of April 1976. Rameshwar included projections for the coming year's printing, as well as details of monies owed to BBT from loans to the temple. As a minimum budget per month, he stated fixed commitments of $275,000. Sorry, and then he proceeded to explain what that budget was allocated for. Included in that was all these loans to the temples. So Rameshwar, he made some suggestions for this. And he also reported how Tamal Krishna Maharaj, in pursuance of Srila Prabhupada's request that he organize book distribution all around the world, has set up an office for this purpose in the new skyscraper building in New York. Some of his ideas include figuring out how to break into the high school libraries, how to sell 100,000 Bhagavad Gitas, find new public finance and kirtan sites, how to develop new methods of of distribution such as door-to-door encyclopedia sales selling complete sets of Prabhupada's book, and how to open other countries with legal structures similar to the US. Rameshwar recommended that other trustees provide manpower to help Tamal develop his program. Right, so this BBT report is so important to Srila Prabhupada because Srila Prabhupada's formula was that the books were the basis of ISKCON, and through us putting our heart and soul into distributing these books, everything else would be financed. Right? We can see how this is happening here. The temples are depending on the finance of BBT. And that's how they're all functioning. So the most important thing, of course, is how the books are transforming the lives of people who are receiving it. But we can see that as a side effect almost, everything else in Krishna consciousness is also being maintained. Right? The temples, the worship, the devotees. That's how it works. Right? Srila Prabhupada actually gave us himself in these books. Right? Because through him, we have Krishna. And when you have Krishna, right, the formula is the goddess of fortune is with Krishna. And that's how we have all all kinds of financial needs being met. Prabhupada's formula was therefore that the temples were a base to send out the soldiers of the devotees to distribute the books. Right? That was his purpose. He was his goal. And that's also why he said that we could preach for a few minutes to somebody. Right? And then if you contrast, when you give Srila Prabhupada's book to them, you're giving Prabhupada to them. And this is how they'll eventually achieve Krishna. And so he wanted us to focus on this very much. So then Rameshwar, he went on to explain about how these two Sanskrit editors in Vrindavan had sort of given up their services, it seemed, to Srila Prabhupada and maybe taken on something else, because he referred to it, Rameshwar referred to it as the age-old Babaji disease that affects our Sanskrit men. And then Srila Prabhupada himself wrote to those two devotees to find out from them what their activities were now that they had given up their services to him. And it was Srila Prabhupada's concern that he was writing to them. It wasn't that he was trying to catch these two renegades and he needed these Sanskrit editors. Srila Prabhupada knew and knows that he is the way to achieve Krishna. That we could go through many paths, many people can promise us different things, but whether they can deliver us to Krishna is anyone's guess. So Srila Prabhupada wants to keep everybody under his shelter for that reason, and it was his love. It was his love for them that caused him to write to them, find out that they weren't being misled. Right. Rameshwar also explained how he was looking for a larger warehouse for BBT in LA since they had outgrown their space. And what did Srila Prabhupada say to that? He had a practical solution to the warehouse problem. Simply send some of the books to the temple in New York, right? And use one complete floor for storage. Right? So instead of everything being held in the LA BBT, send some to New York. With Tamal Krishna there to oversee things, that is in New York, the BBT could have a warehouse on both the west and the east coast, right? LA and New York. So it sounds so practical, right? But that's the point of us reading these little pastimes, that we can see that although it seems so obvious, Prabhupada was the one who thought about it, because he's the Acharya. He can see everything as it is. He can actually give us the right understanding of how to behave in all circumstances. Therefore, we act under the Acharya. We get guidance from the Acharya. And we also understand why all these details had to be put to Srila Prabhupada. He was not just guiding these disciples of his, but he was actually giving them faith in him, so that they would continue to follow him, continue to follow his example, even after he wasn't around to give it to them personally. And in that way they would also be elevated to this platform of, we could say, good spiritual common sense that Srila Prabhupada had. So the expertness of the Acharya, it's not just for spiritual matters. It's not that he can only tell you how to lead kirtan or how to give a class or how to cook prasadam. Srila Prabhupada was able to give his disciples directions on everything. Right? He wasn't trained as an accountant, but he kept an eye on these financial matters and gave them so many practical ways to deal with them, not to speak of everything else. Right? If you read Prabhupada, I'm sure many of us have read Prabhupada's Lilamrita. It was like he knew everything about everything, right? So this is the thing. It's because there's two main reasons we can put it down to. Srila Prabhupada considered, like we were speaking about that Yukta Vairagya principle in the beginning, everything is Krishna's energy. Right? Everything is Krishna, essentially. So nothing must be misused. Nothing must be wasted. And this was one of his main motivations. He respected everything, not as his, but respected everything as Krishna's. Right? And so his expertness was his way of showing love for Krishna, dealing with everything so nicely. And the other principle is that if we apply ourselves selflessly to all these services, then we come under the shelter of the internal potency, and she will guide us as to how we can become expert as well. So it's attainable, this level of expertness that Srila Prabhupada has. It's attainable, because like the 4th chapter Bhagavad Gita states, the worshipper becomes of the same quality as the worshipable. And when we become situated on that absolute level, then the expertness comes with it. Right? We have that view of everything in the way that is truly good and right and correct. Right now we're seeing from a very jaded and a very limited perspective in the material world. We need those spiritual eyes. We get them through engaging in devotional service selflessly, and the internal potency of Krishna, Srimati Radharani. She gives us the intelligence of how we can perform all these services as expertly, right, as our spiritual teachers would. That's the formula. So the sincerity and the selflessness, just like we were saying, even for those who are on the spiritual search, that is a very important quality. It's almost like a language that we can communicate with the Lord in the heart, for Him to know what our intention is, Srimati Radharani, for her to understand what we want. And through that sincerity, they'll give us the ability to actually engage in everything perfectly for Krishna service. So whether that is for cooking, right, for art, for kirtan, for philosophy, right? Because then what did Srila Prabhupada do after this? Tonight he discussed these philosophers now, Kant and Marx, for the philosophy book, right? Because the perfect service under the perfect acharya never ends. Okay, so thank you all so much for your kind attention. Srila Prabhupada ki. Are there any questions or comments? Anything you try and clarify? Anything you want to correct me on? There's nothing. Thank you all so much. Hare Krishna.